자자나 저거 주로 상마 다시 되래. 내저도 동마도 배치고 차서. 그래서 스마냠들이거나 동바통로 차와 가가야 요래. 대금 보상 치마를 시인데 왜 다시 되래 저기.
Dashidele, to all the Dharma friends on the live stream. Thank you for being here. I'm very happy to see all of your faces. So actually, even though our minds are always together, it's a different kind of feeling that arises when we see each other's faces. And that's also because of our clinging to a concrete reality and so on. But anyways, Dashidele.
We'll begin with the opening prayers in the Yellow Prayer Book on page 1.
Deva dan den donga dan da yurdu lana me bayan da bazo besanjo rinpoche tobarso.
All Mother Sentient Beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All Mother Sentient Beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Jeje de sama jeje pardo lunga yes gewa la go ma je pardo lunga yes gewa la go de terene zon de nyama zon da som je ba lunga yes gewa la go.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Page 7 for Mandala offering.
Ram jam so shengen yor pe so ma le lo ye lang de ber lang da de nian zhou gong tou jie zong de so da le long juan do ba jin jie da Hong Kong Jin Qian Chai Yong De Ma Jie Da Du Zong Wen Wu Bo Jie Ce Gong Mer Jie Dan Zhen Xie War Sen Jie Lo Mer Dan Nge Mian Ta Le Yong Zhe Xin Jian Ga Ne Som Zhou Wong Ta Qie Jie Men Xian Lan De Ne Lo Men Zhan Zhou Per Ve San Jie To Ba Sun Jie Lu.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Devada Ki Rana Mandala Padeja Soha. Requesting teachings on page 10. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles, and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Giving is only Lapatala of the Gamayo, the Jagadilla, Sansaro, Dodija, Mabamila, Jagabo, Pomoto, Javan, Bacadilomon, and so on. Mommy, Japan, at the Society, and young one, and some sort of a Savila. So one day, also sometimes I church king, Yasomi was Georgia, so. Since continue the Dajina Sabajujan and the Sato. Oh, and you didn't talk about that. Don't say that. The Matola and over the Yelanda. Something you do, and so go already. Taranga Palak or Dino to the already. The name so charming, Capu Namedini, Tagomara. Moparata Mango and Drogo, Drogo, or is in Jonathan, Palamato Gigi, Mary, Pochung Jungri, the Palas Pemza, Lord of Lap, the Pala Logiti, Hilta, the Labnum, your Mary, Raga Palato, the Gatago, Martina, to draw the mango, sugary. The Nagapala did something with Chapa, Rekoso, Kangis in the Jasa. Munjet is a Samanka Ju, Shivani Doti, Tomasi Chidro, Duisum. This is Samanka Ju, the Kaju, Chung Chung Nina, names of Kaju, Samanka Juni, Kaju Yang Chung Yid, Kaju Cheji Chung Yid, Yang Chung Yid, names of Kaju, Samanka Ju, the Nishari. This is Samanka Ju, the 中国人他马西龙主义情绪，出去马些些，我觉得上过了马西里汤面，这拍了的上过了马西里汤的，我老这个马西套上来，我就是搞完用的，就是我们说马西里汤用的，这里用马这个这里，没得我那种说我老个没得的，这里这边呢，这里他的马西上的，这里。to Chinese young didn't talk about the chi, to do my chip at the dig, and my son to it. Because you young song did got you young Hadam Tung. Name도 참이 좀더 야좀 밍딩가 고마요. 그래. 다 콩이마도 말아. 콩이마도 대 총총다래. 되면 최체 총요 말아. 그러니까 줄라 제총들이 공부하지 졸라만 점심 자치 랍제총 되겠더니 제총자리면 사자치 버리 제총요 말아. 이 가주 제제 종제 양총이지. 양총들이 양의 총총이니 딱 거기는 공부하니 내도 가주 양 mangaji tataku so guna kasheyo re. Yena di katini di sabasatang chala. Di yang chongni. Angsunga. Masi. Masi lodrinshi. Masi lodu rinshi. Chide lodu ase da kasi masi lodrinshi. Lodrinshi. 자성아.
나랑 참 무서워. 다른 거 좀. Please listen. So today, Dharma friends, I'm going to tell you more stories. So maybe it's just a bit of a waste of time, but since everybody likes to listen to it, I also want to share it. Before actually moving on to Lord Garchen Rinpoche, because that was actually the one who made me go in the future. Now I'm a young boy. But that was the one that made me go to the monastery in the future. But before that, when I was a very young child, my father was actually, I stayed at home with my father, and he was really my teacher. He taught me how to read and write and so on. And also, I will tell now a story about my father, a history of my father that I've never actually I'm told before, because it's also not very suitable to tell this kind of praising stories of your own father. But since you're all my Dharma friends, I'm going to tell you this story. Actually, my father is quite inconceivable, incredible. And so the history, his family line goes back to a Mahasiddha called Lodro Rinchen. He was a Mase clan. So the family name was Mase. And so he was a great Mahasiddha. Some also called him Chogi Lodro, apparently. So anyways, the history goes back to his time. And this Mahasiddha lived in the Golok area. So there's an area called Mase Tang, so a Mase plain. And this is where the name Mase came from this Mase plain in Golok. And so there was this Siddha, there were different, at that time there were many different divisions of the Kagyu lineage. So there was two smaller divisions. One was apparently called the small one, and then the other one was the even smaller one. So one was called Nendo Kagyu, and one was the Sorman Kagyu. So this is the smaller lineage as where he comes from, and so because I asked for clarification, what about the smaller and even smaller? So Rinpoche said actually there's of course no difference in terms of, it's not smaller in terms of great or more or better in a sense, because these teachings speak about Mahamudra, and in Mahamudra there is really no division between high and low, or good and bad, and so on. But it's more about the reason why some are called greater and some lesser. It has to do with the extent of the activities of that particular Lama. So anyways, he came from this area in Golok, which is the Marse Tang or the Marse Plain. So when they then migrated to our area, and they asked them, where are you from? They said, we come from Marse. So then they were called the Marse clan. So actually my family line really is from the Golok area in Tibet. And so ever since this Siddha, up until today, this family line has remained unbroken.
배 추바 야고 찬조리 당 밖에 추바 주주 마셔봐요리 이 추바 마찬가지로 참바 잡아서 쏘고 차로리 배 이제 무슨 파업지 판이 찍거든요 마셔수가 나오거든요 롱바 되게 잡아치 못하면 쏘고 차는 그냥 깨다요거든요 마시수 간나로 대양 잡아 그다지들이 차도래지 들이지 니가 전부요래지 주바 찬나배야고 양 마찬가지니 들이 잡아서 집어 차도래지
Kipa yapore, chukin yapore ana kontrabari kare. Da dorto na kipa ni yore. Chikti yaga chare chikti to. Ale dendo bari. So then this family line of the Marsa family line 저기 gyunde yaga ra. Oh. So this Marsa family line, so there were obviously many descendants coming from this Marsa family line, and so for the most part, over the generations, the line of Dharma practitioners was uninterrupted and really an excellent line of really excellent practitioners. But then some of the descendants also kind of went into the other direction, and so there was one descendant called Mase Sogam, and his name was Mase Sogam Norbo, and so he was actually a kind of a criminal, a bandit. He was quite a well-known criminal. So that's actually also important to know because then that kind of completes the whole story. So we can't leave anything out, in other words. But for the most part, the most descendants really formed this excellent line, but then there were a few descendants who were a little criminal.
이게 서로 대들이 이제성 버쩍 되는 코라종을 맞아 버 요어들이 주바차종 상화 주바차종 이거 봐라들이 고템 빵내들이 참내적으로 공 고슬을 뭐로 고들 법인 섬 상는데 송들이 다시 버쩍들이 양 강로 고치라 강를 송들이 공 강를 초리 조성 포토됐다 인상말이 조금 되리 니상말은 되다 안에 들고서요. 그래서 이제 바라디 답변 나는니 답변직 코라종 되어리 마시 사도를 되면 고소 상마치바 차서 이지는 책당에 바라리 영차바리 드리콩 나상하기는 보면 드리콩 막참 돌더니 말라 이제 조금 맹도 저기들이 공마 코라 파브요레
Shamsen Sachamingre. Sachaming Bayola Mure. So in the present day generation of the family line, for the most part, has become a really excellent Dharma practitioner. So there were 5 brothers, including my father, and only one of those 5 actually became like somebody basically who lives just a worldly life and who didn't really engage in the practice. But 4 of them became really good Dharma practitioners. And one of them was also my father, who really gave up the worldly life, and he spent a long time in retreat, completely sealed without ever coming out. And then also the other 3 brothers were doing retreat. And one of the brothers, for example, he was practicing in Mount Kailash area in a mountain retreat, which is in a place, was it Ninsham in Nepal, where also one relative, Anidudrul, now stays. So that was one of them. And the one brother who then pursued the worldly life is called Mase Sator, and so 4 of the brothers, they spent their life in retreat, and one of them was my father. So he was in retreat, but then I was born and I was a secret child. So that is why he had to end his retreat. That was after was then recognized as the tulku, and that then kind of compelled him to kind of give up the retreat and enter a more worldly life. After Rinpoche said, after I was released from prison, the one brother, which was his uncle, Master Sator, the one who followed the worldly life, and he had a wife, Deki Dharma. And so actually in the area where he stayed, when Rinpoche said I came out of prison, actually it turned out that Master Sator became a great practitioner, and a lot of people actually in that area, in the town, had a lot of faith in him. And then another of my uncles, who was one of the retreatants, Master Kanyin, he traveled to Orissa in India, and which was the same, settlement, Tibetan settlement of Nidan Changme. And so he became a really great Dharma practitioner, also well known there. And he also passed away in Orissa. And so when I was very young, as I said, I stayed with my father. as my teacher. And so at some point it was a time where he said I have to go to the monastery, but before that he sent me into a retreat, Vajrakilaya secret accomplishment retreat, which is the one that we are practicing now. And so in the context of that retreat, he introduced me to the 4 kilas, mainly the wisdom awareness kila. And in this way, through this wisdom awareness kila, he introduced me to the nature of the mind. And so then I completed in that retreat all the mantra accumulations of Vajrakilaya. And so he really introduced me to the nature of the mind, and it is through him that I felt I have really understood the nature of the mind at that time. And so normally people may say that, oh, you need some really famous high lama who introduces you to the nature of the mind, but actually it was really my father who had introduced me to the nature of the mind first. And so therefore I really have faith, devotion to him, just like a lama. And there's really no difference. And I supplicate him and have faith in him just like without any doubt in my mind. And I really feel that the first time of understanding the nature of the mind was the kindness of my father. He really gave me the nature of the mind by giving me the practice of the Vajrakilaya, and specifically of the 4 kilas, the 4th wisdom awareness kila, which we also find explained in the lineage supplication, which I've explained a lot in the past. So that is also why, because of this history I have with the Vajrakilaya practice, that many disciples like to engage in this practice. So that was from that time when I was very young. So my father gave me this practice, and then I completed the mantra accumulation at that time. And also my father gave me the nature of the mind. It was through him that I felt now I have understood the nature of the mind. So actually, aside from that, my father never really was very nice or gentle to me. But at that time, when I understood the nature of the mind, he showed some approval, and he said, "Now, you understand the nature of the mind, so you're doing well."
거기서 말아, 애들이 갑자기 힙합 가지고 강매진 애들이 락을 새로 쳤다. 새로 칠 때는 애들이 남도 매박하고 생때를 때나 직당은 남하나지 사람들이 들이 값들이 다 남상 세 남하다라는 세분 남하니 개발다가 되네. 센터 남하 체배봐 차대요래. 다 세분일로문이 들이 마음을 가르치나들이 세분일로 때 하고서나들이 참아하고 들이 세는 다진이요 말이서 책 인송마송 대고 때들 뒤들은 속들 들이가 샘 따라 될 거래 샘 따야 되들이 주체면 따서 거래 마대티 발라도리 대통령들이 라면 타줘요 그래서 대학들이 하고서 이때는 이게 야시라 같이 가시는 것도 이렇게 발라고 주세요.
And also in the context of Vajrakilaya, he introduced me, he called this kila, the kila of all-pervasive primordial awareness. And so in the context of that, he said, look at your mind. Look at the thought-free mind. When you look at the thought-free mind, then there is nothing there. It is experienced just like space. And in that moment, you should see, is there a difference between the outer space and the mind space? And then you will experience that there is no delineation, there's no difference. And so that is really when I have seen directly the nature of the mind, and also this is how I had then explained it myself in the future. But this is really what all that he said, and he didn't really say anything else when he introduced me. When you know the nature of the mind, you will know everything. When you see the nature of the mind, you see there is no self and no other. So all that you need to do is to look at your mind. Continuously, you have to look at your mind. If you stop looking at your mind, then it is lost. And so at this time, I really kind of gained some certainty that I just need to see my mind. And at this time, I really understood. And so, anyways, that's what I explain to others, and now some like to listen to what I say. So, anyways, that is the story of my father. And so I was still very young, so at that time, and my father was still my teacher, and then sometimes I would go to different places with my father, and also to the monastery. And so anyways, at some point there was the time where I had to then enter the monastery. And so that was the time when I met the Siddha Jim Dorje. And when I saw him first, I liked him very much. And I wanted to hug him right away. And he said to me, so it seems you like me. And he says, I like you so much. You are my Lama. And so that is, I probably recognized and knew at that time, this is my Lama. And no, he actually didn't give me a lot of instructions. He didn't say so much. What he did say is that you have to memorize the Ganges Mahamudra. And he also gave the reading transmission of the Ganges Mahamudra. And just one time, and then he didn't really say much. His words were really few, and sometimes he would say a few words. And also, for the most part, he didn't always stay at the monastery, so he would just come to the monastery sometimes. So, anyways, I'm now going to share the life story of Lama Jim Dorje.
Garchen Rinpoche, Jim Dorje, Rotoxum, now should have done the Jolatani, Ne Lama Bola, Yokata, Anigum Pasta, Ne Lama Boat, Nesan, that's an Anigum Matoa, Ne Lama Boat, Holiday, then Garchi in the Pocton, your Garchi in among Hunjetus, then Dim Tong took some song, now can put the Rogi Rotoxum. Dem so tong ma so sa ne ga chi de ma de per ta te ro di mang bo yo le ta ga chi de ma sa ne yo le de la ma chi mi do je na ko na ma nyam de yo le di ka ne tri sam tone ya pe tri go pa na ta ni yang go pa na pe tri go pa na ni chi mi do sam de yo le.
So mainly he gave me the Ganges Mahamudra, and one thing he repeatedly said is, the mind is like space. When I heard him say that, I also remembered my father's words, and I thought, oh, this is what my father said. So even though he didn't say much, and didn't understand all these words, but I did see that this is exactly what my father said. So Lama Jim Dorje was a disciple of the previous Garchen Rinpoche. And so at that time, at the time of the previous Garchen Rinpoche, he was a monk at Gar Monastery, and he had different positions at Gar Monastery. He was a disciplinarian, and he also was a chant master and so on. And he really protected the monastery with his life. And so in the previous life, the previous Garchen Rinpoche and this Jim Dorje, and so Jim Dorje Rinpoche and the previous Garchen Rinpoche actually spent 13 years doing retreats together for 13 years. And the place of their retreat was at the nunnery, and behind the nunnery of Gar Monastery at the Nelamabuk. So it's a cave called Nelama Cave. And that was the cave where the previous Gar Chogi Nima did retreat. He did 13 years of Chakrasamvara retreat and probably accumulated hundreds of millions of Chakrasamvara mantras there. And at the end of his retreat, of Chogi Nima's retreat after 13 years, it is said that he was able to fly in the sky. So there are many stories about that too. And anyways, so the previous Garchen Rinpoche and Drogo Jim Dorje, not Drogo, the Jim Dorje, Lama Jim Dorje, the two of them together and spent 13 years in retreat in that place. And then after the retreat was over, then Jim Dorje came back to the monastery, and then also he did retreat at the monastery.
Gachil Buddha, Dran Catholic Yori, the Contaja Tang Yori, the Dran Catholic, Ramsey Totten, Tadi Yori, the Nimaturi, Gachin Bojupe, Lavgari, Kajak Tang Pebble, the Kong Chang Pet, the Kong Chang Pet, the Chirang, the Batanjo Maris. Gobnyami o mar tadema ni batang de tachen ni ba bo do yo mar si chang go me go da ge ma ye ni chang go go ban de be cho chang ma dong song sa cha yi da song ji to ka ka tu na go si je de chimi de be to de shi mo chimi de kang bo wo li pa sa phem na da ba yin da ge ko na de ni go go kang na si ni na ji bo ji sim chong yo le di chang de go chi yo le de pa de phem na 주된 봐 공을 해야지. 주된 봐 저희들이 예송까지 뭐지 송들이 주된 봐 잡든지 예송들이 쏘 콩고 살았어 말이. 뒤에 뭐들이 사창 빼도 깨야지. 가족당 때리 또 가리는 공들이 공 톡밤 톡밤 때리 공 라마 패송 가족당 아들은 칼 패송. 이리 저가 카토 양양 짜용들이 가설 마대는 go tong de tri chang be tokya be ma be ma bo song de ka no tong tri chang jang khong lam ma tong go do lam pa do ke ko do lam song chu do ye sem ba lam ma de ba chi mo yo le ta lam ma de lam ma ting tong go lam ma tong go do cha go ka do chi mo yo le ti do de te khong ya ti lam ma yi ri tik de di lam ma di yin je tong so se Did 강반지게 도치 마스 강반지니 나만의 소송시 대단히 잡지 봐요. 티카지 송사들이 그 항상 되게 돌비 지켜봐 봐도 대체 잡니가지. 단 담배는 샵지 담았느니 답에 딱게 도만 이제 용어지. 뭐 지니스 데레지 그지 캐링도 다 이도대 요리 다 빠져들지. 대체 다 대체 들어가서 도디 시키고 또 파 가봤나 마법만 통이게 고서 들으면 통이게 야 들이야 나는 공통으로 송 검잡대 양절라마 탈로마 밤에 이 보랑는 고치니 가면 가족당을 라마 배우듯이 다지 찍기는 라마 독들만 통화서 이것도 막 가고 들콩 독강통으로 하고는 배우 들라고는 공시계 동 되니 소도세 대죠. 대체적인 감성 그 도지 공부 막 가버려. 너 이치고 가서 너 가서 들 가버려. 공을 나만 도지 약하지. 너디 있어. 야 다만에 다 도들라면 통통통 그 배시 자체는 도들이 같이 묻지. 하하 하실라 파살모다. 들이 책들만 들이 공 표정 아주 정말 표정. 들이 가서 오면 되지. 들이 공오 다들 공마티 도들 지파라 대선함 낭설이 들이 공 들이 최양성 들이 뭐지 공발 대로 자성 대시고 좀 진짜 샵지들 가고는 요래 대단한 빠져버리는 거서 당이 요래 잡니가 진ям도 요래 대배들이 라마침이 더지 공을 샵지래 공을 대면이 사지 잡지 망보지 아요래 공을 샵지게 라게 되래지.
So then he did some retreat at a monastery, and so that was still at the time now of the previous Garchen Rinpoche, and so the previous Garchen Rinpoche stayed at the upper monastery, at the higher part of the monastery, and then Jim Dorje stayed at the lower part of the monastery, but they were quite close, so they could see each other. Upper monastery la yorwa. Ma magun la yorwa. Margun. Oh yeah. So upper and lower here is not the upper and lower monastery, but it's both at the lower monastery. But at the lower monastery, there's an upper place and the lower place. So the Garchen Rinpoche, right? He stayed in the kind of upper part where there is the temple of the lower monastery, and then Jim Dorje's retreat cabin was at like below that. Behind and below also, right? Below and behind. Anyways, they could just see each other. It's very close. There was this time when, so normally the Garchen Rinpoche would treat him really nicely, but then all of a sudden one day he started to scold him and yell at him and insult him. So he came to his cabin and he said that you don't know how to practice, you don't know how to recite mantra, you have no experience in meditation, you go somewhere else, you don't stay at the monastery. So he asked him to leave. And so then Jim Dorje was wondering, was very heartbroken and was wondering why is the Lama treating him this way? Until now, he had cared for him with so much kindness. For example, the Garchen Rinpoche told Jim Dorje that you are a Garchen Rinpoche's emanation. And actually, of course, it was Garchen, but he had so much regard for him that he said, you are Garchen Rinpoche's emanation, or in reincarnation. And I take refuge in you, and so on. So he always was so had much admiration for Jim Dorje, and Garchen Rinpoche didn't say that you are to think, but to Garchen Dorje directly, but he told that to the other monks, or to the other people, that he really is Garchen Rinpoche. And so he had great veneration for him. And so then all of a sudden he scolded him, and he was really very sad about that. And he was wondering what had happened. And so the Lama came and he scolded him, and then he left. And as he was walking away, he kept scolding until he couldn't hear him. He kept scolding him. And then so the Lama arrived back on his kind of upper area. and where he stayed. And so then the Lama was still scolding him, and he could just basically see just his head, and the rest he couldn't see anymore. So he could just see his head, and he still heard him say how terrible you are, and just putting him down. And then eventually he couldn't see the Lama's face anymore. He just could hear his voice scolding him. But because he had so much devotion to the Lama, he felt that I just hear his voice, I still want to see him. And so because he wanted to see him, so he went outside into his courtyard, and there is this huge rock, and which is like this size of like a British table or so, and like this huge rock, and he like climbed up this rock and thinking that if he goes up there, he can still see the guru. And so then he kind of stretched himself on this rock and to see the guru. And while he was doing that, his feet sank into the rock and left two footprints on the rock. So then when he came down from the rock, he saw those two huge footprints. And he thought that if the Lama sees that, he's going to scold me again. And actually, speaking about those footprints, later on, some Japanese people came to examine the authenticity of these prints, and they actually said that these are definitely true human footprints, which actually now are still at the monastery, and we have images of that. So in any case, he left these footprints on the rock, and then when he realized that he did that, he was worried that the Lama, somebody will see that, and then the Lama will be upset. So he turned that huge rock around, so the Lama couldn't see that. And so then later, the Lama Garchen Rinpoche came back. Again, I'm scolding him. And so he was really worried, thinking that hopefully he doesn't see the rock, but he won't see it because I turned it around. And so then the Lama came in, I'm scolding him, and then he just picked up that rock and just turned it around like that. And then he saw the footprints there, and he didn't say anything. He just said, "Ha," and he clapped his hands. And then he left. He didn't say anything else at that time. And so, anyways, these are the. So then he was thinking that now he saw the footprints, but maybe also now he gave me his blessing, and he cried out of great devotion. So the reason for mentioning those footprints is also because they are really authentic. And they're still at the Gar monastery, and we also have pictures made of that to pass around to others. And so they're both of these footprints, both of his feet together. So that is one of the stories of Jim Dorje.
말 아니라 저한테 로스동 줘서 석진 강강마다 자세라니 소리만 되니더니 로스동 니들 저기 가시랑 내들이 왕릉에서 나는데 당서 왕릉으로 제가 말이 서로 찌먹지 로로 가요리 콩도 당고더니 콩도 좀 정나는 가군을 팹 같이는 붙여서 정나는 콩이 저거래 내가 고트 마잡 때 고마때 잡 들이콩 나야게 땅 네 제리장감 브람드라 때서 남들이 들이고 롱드라데 남 때서 같이 때서 남들 같이 남들이 그때 말은 도로라 들이고 뒤서 고마 때 남들이 같이 남 들이 저들이 좀 고적들이 롱로 송티는 저들이 좀 되게 직선하고 이 대치포티 대치세만 하고 마고서 기간이 좋아요 막고 말이 좀 되게 직선하고 이 송티는 뭐나 레좀디 하고 그랬다 라마이나들이 좀 제지 하마고는 추바차가 말이 좀 제시 살들이 주시 살 좀 제 맛이 주시기요 말이 카르실만이 돈시요 말이 좀 제시고래서 데르상 못하는들이 속차 초청이나 대당 아니다 심지발에 딱 대등 양다양의 삶았더나 데르들이 데서 속차를 제시 받을 계속 때문에 속차를 세세해요 Dharma just say they
And I also received from him the 37 Bodhisattva practices, which is something that he really distributed in various monasteries to all the monks. So also he gave it to me, and I had to memorize the 37 practices. So basically, I received from him the 37 practices in the Ganges Mahamudra, and he also gave a little explanation, some teachings on those. And he gave empowerment and transmission. So at that time, when I was very young, I didn't really like to go for these teachings and transmissions. I really just wanted to play outside. So then one time, at that time, he was also staying in the previous Garchen Rinpoche's chambers. And so he asked me to come. And so then he gave me a little bit of candy, some sweet molasses. And then he locked the door. And I actually wanted to go, but he wanted to give me teachings and transmission, but then the door also was locked. So then he gave me these teachings and transmissions. And then he also gave me one quote from the Jikung text by Jigten Somgen, from the Gongchik, where it says, karma, cause and effect is the natural manifestation of one's momentary thoughts and moment-to-moment thoughts. And he said that this is all you need to really understand. And so as a practitioner, you have to understand that. And anyways, at that time, I wasn't really able to understand so much, and wasn't so interested in listening. And so he just really told me that, and he introduced me to karma. And he said that if you're, as a Lama, you have to understand karma. If you don't understand karma, you won't become a Dharma practitioner. If you understand karma, then you know the Dharma. If you don't understand karma, then you don't really know the Dharma. Then you maybe can speak about the Dharma, but you don't really understand its true meaning. So because of that quote on karma, I always thought about it again and again. For example, when I saw a little animal, I thought that our mind is one and the same. And in this way, I was able to develop some love for different animals, and which kept me from killing them. Because otherwise I would maybe kill the flies and so on, the insects. But through this reflection, I ended up not killing them.
Tiri ko kasa kara pere tiri yaka korcha jangna yogore ba jangna yogomani kangwana jila yogomani tiri romba kasa kara tiri mitama tiri ko tepa mangbo yori tiri manu chol manu jang to ba kon pok tiri manu tongsol manu ba tiri yog tiri manu tongsol jang to sachabi mi peblo yori tiri tela ma tachi mo cha tiri ko mahola pe tiri ko mahola majapo ate mahoti tiri machiji tiri Tena permettere machi 강대 아니 마치지 강대 내인데 타면 꼬라 잡고 요래 드니 내들 꼬라 자주들이 드니 콩 쳐받쳐도 내고 로가로 패디 드니 람가는 미자 타방부 냠도 저거 요래 냠도 도나더니 람장이 콩 쳐받쳐 따나보지 요래 따나보지 그거지나 미창한 거라 딱 거기 우조시 그러니 딱 사방으로 나네 뭐 그거지는 참이 때마치 뭐 뒤집어게 이제만 고라리 tok 요래 뒤집어게 그 마치 간 거라 남나니더니 랍상 걸 길랑 파움치 보지 때나 락바 잡들이 잡지야 딱 잡지야 요래 미딱한 몸이 통골 때다다 여절이 데리들이 게라치 못차 데리들이 마호라들이 라마용 뜻이요 맞아 집주는 못해서 요래 데 맞아 집주는 못해서 이때 공들은 따라 좋다 요래 데리들이 재미도지 빼자시면은 데리 재미도지 그냥 공을 라마해서 재미도지 그냥 공을 라마해서 공이 따세로 올라가 재미도 좀 창콩을 라마이들 집주는 못해 창콩을 라마이들 거기 때도 올라가도 깨다요래 그랬더니 가공이 앞에 가공이 앞에 그랬더니 그 갑들이 맞아 집주는 먹지. 가고 네 재미들이 안 나질 패탈도 이 맞아 집주는 뭐지 공파잡 수잡 수 공파 강바징을 와 강바징들이 다 재미들이 장 패보성 앞에 타는 거리 나중에 막 호로거나 따수는 거거나 이 맞자 똥한 거거리 그렇지 재미들이 가두지 공나 효요래 그래서 무슨 자 루지공다다 루지다가나 루지공마들잖아 요래 자 다른 머리 다른 마을에 배 다른 머리 루지공마 유슈가 살아 루지공마다 저기 있는데 내가 요새더니 다 콩문이 패터고만도 콩패 탐나더니 콩을 ram내나 거지 재미들이 됐어 맞아지는 거죠 새끼당 이 콩을 ram내 콩을 난 거지 대신 그리 맞아지는 뭐지가 베스트 받쳐 뭐요래 어떤 재미들이 ram내라니 막 까마지 소를 되겠더니 밀콩을 매만 볼게 당은 다들은 재미들이 그래서 ram내나 연구요래 이 마을 매만 보라로 대지 이 남카는 내잖아요 이 재미들이 루지고는 저기 재미들이 다 하라고지 다 하고 좋더라고요 자기지고 띵하게 하고 대요래지 들이대가 다들은 맞아지는 뭐지 공부하는 것이 ram내자고 그래 다 콩가 좀 요래 나 로트고 말이야 ram내자고 이 저거 통보는 저거 그래서 그리고 대사는 통보진 거라 ram내들이 가스 맞장 총잡 내일 주잡들이 내라서만 제일 ram내 차오지 그렇지 ram내든 한 거라 대다 통보 이걸로 패네 그렇지 좀 모나답들이 ram내 랑들이 많이 마을이 주 때라들이 거서 참아들이 나가 ram내 잡아가니 대지진이 ram내 랑들이 그렇게 다당으로 권도 두지 ram내 직바 직장 뭐라 잡아보면 레벨이 미자 리 잡아는 게 ram내 민스 레벨과 거기 가도 지고니 ram내 돌아 ram내 가세만 장담을 지우라 진짜 들이대 뺏게 다치 못차 자요래 돼
And so Jim Dorje would also travel to different villages and monasteries, and wherever he stayed, he never stayed in a house. He always stayed in a like a tent or like a yak hair tent. And in different villages, the people had much devotion to him. And what he practiced is he held the 100 million money accumulation retreats wherever he went, just staying in these yak hair tents. So everybody saw him as a very, very precious Lama. So one time he traveled to Mahok, which is a place quite far away. Is it in Golok? Is it in Amdo? Yeah, so it's in Golok, Amdo area. And there is like a holy like a pilgrimage mountain, so the Machin. So people would go there for circumambulating the mountain. And so Jim Dorje went there on his horse, and then there were hundreds of people following them because many people had great devotion to him. And whenever people would bow down to him in devotion, then the horse actually would also lower its head toward the people. Whenever they would do that, the horse would also do that. And so then on the circumambulation around that mountain, then at some point the horse just kind of jumped up and then down and left a footprint on the rock there too. And actually hundreds of people saw that, and it's probably still there today. It became quite famous for leaving a footprint there. So anyways, there was also a Lama in this area, in the Magog area, called the Magog Dzogchen Rinpoche. And he also started like a retreat area there. And he regarded Jim Dorje as extremely precious. And when they met, Jim Dorje said, "You're my Lama," and Dzogchen Rinpoche said, "You're my Lama." So they kind of admired each other. And so then Jim Dorje left again, and so this Mako Jetsun Rinpoche. So he started a monastery there and a retreat village there. And so after that was completed, Jim Dorje had already arrived back in Nangchen, which is quite far away from that area in Amdo. And then Jetsun Rinpoche invited him to come for the consecration of the new retreat village. And so it was very far away. If he would have to go on horseback at that time, it would take you like 15 days or so to get there. And so at that time, Jim Dorje was staying at the Drupgyo monastery, which is in the Yushu area, which is now the monastery where Drukku Chinga Rinpoche stays. And that's really very far away from Amdo. And so Jim Dorje wasn't able to go there. But he did say to Jetsun Rinpoche that I am going to perform a consecration from afar at that particular time. And so Maku Jetsun Rinpoche had great devotion for Jim Dorje. And so he gathered all of the people in the area, and he said that on this particular day, so looking at the astrology, at that particular day, Jim Dorje is going to perform a consecration from where he's at. And so he gathered all the people to come here at that time, so to the retreat area that Jetsun Rinpoche had just completed. And so they made kind of a time for a certain day where Jim Dorje would perform the consecration. And so at that time, he was staying in Drupgyo Monastery. And so on that day, Jim Dorje had a monk that Rinpoche says, I also know, his name is Kunchuk Tsering, right? Kunchuk Tsering. And so he said, so today we are going up to the mountain to perform this consecration ceremony for Mage Jetsun Rinpoche over in Amdo, because I can't go there. So the two of them went up high on the mountain, and so they had different grains, which they also colored in all the colors, like white and yellow, blue, red, green, and so on, as in all the colors. And so then when they performed the consecration ceremony, they would cast those colored grains. And at the very same time, the people in Amdo at Jetsun Rinpoche's area, his retreat place, had all assembled exactly at that time, knowing that now he is performing the consecration ceremony. And even though, as we have said, it's extremely far away, at the very same time, at the very time when Jim Dorje was casting those colored grains, from the sky at Jetsun Rinpoche's place, like rain falling down, the same kind of substances and all the colors fell down, and everyone saw it. So that became a quite famous story.
Gaguna tini jima tan gaguna ya pem tini koge taring boni tini tomba to horson go ten kansa ji yin tomba go tini men go kansa je lo de yin tini de lang tini ge tang tini koge ta ko da yin yo ten gaguna jo sen kang ba de zo go re song tini ya sa bi ge lang yo re ya ri lang ni tini ta gaguna ka ba sa ba zo go na tini le ro yo ma re 아들이 가르치지. 되는 것만 같이 보지게 사강 종종지 여행은 지나 바깥서가 사만을 거라 지설들이 사자 동바를 하니 야야 사자 동바 동장의 야야래. 되니 자기가 가시기 찍대는 다들 것이 같이 단들은 렉시체들이 채어지. 되니 거기 다른 버리더니 잠깐만은 거라도 이정 채다를 그런데 들이 이마티 거라들 감시오는데 딱딱한 같이 고메 라칸 젠 들이 발라 파사츠가 거가라와 사실 이야 들이 기억을 가야 맞지 또 봐야야 이 동화들은 딱 듣는데 딱딱한데 다 참아하래 당연히 단침이들지 정말 같이 고마게 다들 거라들 연구는 실내 다 콩라서 비에 우시대 다들 고소 하래 다 콩배스기 라지 못 차요래.
So then he didn't come to Gar Monastery for a few years. And so one day he was about to come back. And so at that time he arranged for a large Buddha statue to be arranged and to be like set up, which is like the size of a house, like really huge, like a whole like a wall of a house. And so then so there was this place. So first of all, so we had to think about constructing a kind of a house or structure for it, yeah. And to build a structure at Gar Monastery is not an easy task. So we are wondering what to do and where to put it and so on. And at the small temple of where the previous Garchen Rinpoche stayed. So at that small temple, there were all kinds of different statues arranged. And then there was some empty spot that just happened to be naturally an empty spot there. And now some of the old monks used to say then, so maybe it's possible that he wants to put the statue exactly there because there's this empty spot. But then, of course, the statue was ordered from far away and already kind of had its kind of determined measurements and so on, and it came in this box. But then the way it arrived was that it exactly kind of fit was exactly made for this empty spot next to the previous Garchen Rinpoche small temple. So that is where it was then arranged, and so everybody was really quite amazed by that, and it's really what Jim Dorje saw. He knew that the previous Garchen Rinpoche now had all of these statues arranged, and that there was this empty spot, and so the way it arrived was that it exactly fit in that spot. And so that really was seen as a kind of a clairvoyant sight due to a very close relationship between the guru and the disciple, and that also became quite a famous story. Female yaks concluded the tapsala.
That's ma ya Chidawara, be ma down, they take the Yanin talk, and so on, so short tone or Matongora, Yanin talk.
So then, so this was the statue offered by Jim Dorje when he returned to Gar Monastery. And so when he then returned to Gar Monastery, he also performed the ordination ceremonies for the Getsul and the Gelong monks. And then he also started the summer retreat, which they held for a month and a half. And for that, he offered 100 female yaks, not because for kind of the it's like an endowment for the fund for the summer retreat, because in the summer retreat the monks are only allowed to eat not to eat any meat, but they're only drinking milk and eating butter and so on. And so then he offered the 100 female yaks so they could milk the yaks also during the summer retreat.
Nimari, Ronka, Kapi Chadi Yorich, Ronka Jima, the Numara, the Kapi Jiba Soya, the Yomareso, Yapotan Tachi, the cheap patch of the Chuparete, in Ronka, the cheap solos in Italy, the cheap of the Chutala Banicatri, Yamang in the Kapi and Changdang, the Kapi, the Davachi and Soya, the John cheap soul in Yamnang, the Javatam. Java Navas, Java Karan Chipo to take a training of Patri, definitely Tamdama, Chikatam, Drama, Chomari, the only chips of Korangtri, Sergetam and Chamnitri, Java Robochuk, plus Java Kiriova, and Cham Jacho, the Sopa Socho, the John so, John Yarga Kabi so, the teacher is.
So then the temple, when they held the summer retreat, was then called the summer retreat house, the temple. And so then the monastery had improved more and more things were happening at the monastery. So then he also started the Dzogchen, the retreat of the 8 rukas, which he considered to be as extremely precious. And as he gave all the empowerments and transmissions and held, he said he would give the great empowerment of the 8 rukas, and that would take an entire month to complete, together with the Dzogchen, the retreat, the great accomplishment. And that is because he really considered the lineage of the 8 rukas as very precious, and he also said that in the future you have to uphold this lineage, and it has to spread in the world, and it must not be interrupted. So this is the Drigung Kagyu 8 ruka lineage, which is actually much more extensive than the Nyingma 8 ruka. In the Nyingma tradition, when the 8 ruka great accomplishment is practiced, it takes about a week. But in the Drigung Kagyu, it took about a month to complete. And so this particular tradition comes from the Drigung Rinpoche and also Chudok. It comes from their vision, their meditative vision. And from that meditative vision also then appeared the Cham dancing to the 8 rukas. And so then together with the Cham, that would take a month to complete. And actually in the very old days of Tibet, during the time of the 5th Dalai Lama, it was not really allowed to perform all kinds of dances, Cham dances. But then the 5th Dalai Lama, he really accepted the transmission of the 8 rukas and Cham dancing that came from Rinchen Puntsok. And when he was staying in Lhasa at that time, the Dalai Lama, he said that it is actually okay he kind of approved the performance of this Cham of Rinchen Puntsok's 8 rukas. So anyways, so at that time then, at the time of Jim Dorje, then he started the Drigung Kagyu 8 rukas great accomplishment practice. And so he gave the great empowerment of all the 8 ruka deities, which is actually a total of 725 deities. And actually normally when you confer an empowerment, you need an image, a tsagli, that is the image of the deity. But there is no tsagli, no image of those 725 deities. So the way he conferred the empowerment is that he had a tanka painting of each of these deities, and he would go around holding this tanka and give each the monks the empowerment by holding each of those tankas onto their heads. And this is how he conferred the empowerment, the great empowerment of the 8 Rukas. And so he also said that this lineage must not be interrupted in the future.
문제들이 참아 서로를 저주요래 다 내선절도만 보송네 내 갑들이 송했더니 거기 참아 르마드 레좀들을 주사요 말이 가나 시작하리 용고대 용고요래 그래서 르마드 송대 이콩 르마드 적대들이 콩 식산 첩주 중앙하는 식수는 아니 이 식성들이 양로지요래 식지 중앙하는 콩 자로 잡자잖아 이 좋게 자로 파베잖아 야 콩스로라 요게 파트가 말이 그냥 버스에 양야 나는 저기 가봐나 야 저야 등문 보대로 제송세
So there are, of course, many more stories for which we might not have the time today, but so he really, in brief, was accepted as a great Mahasiddha, great accomplished master by everyone, just looking at his enlightened activities. And so then later on, when the turmoil broke out in Tibet, so then the troubles arose in Tibet. And so at that time, we were still all staying in the mountains in the monastery, and he said everyone was about to run away, to escape from the communists. And he said, don't go, because you can't really run away from karma. If you have the karma to experience difficulty, you will experience it. You can't run away from it. So he actually stayed, and he didn't escape. And he was arrested, and he later passed away in the Chamdo prison. There's also some stories about that time when he was in prison. For example, there was a time in prison where they put him in shackles and handcuffed him and put shackles on his ankles. And somehow he miraculously released himself from the shackles, sometimes in the middle of the night or early morning. And then he miraculously left his locked house, the cabin, and he just stayed outside for a little bit. And then the police caught him again, and they brought him back inside, and they locked him in again. And so this actually happened several times.
그래서 마치 차동서가 대디 좀 봐대 답고 자니 그 나나 모르게 레지게 요래디 디레지 되게 라마 짜치 뭐 하고서 거기 디디 라마 살아 탑에 담 차동지 차 거지 타과 그것도 똑똑 거기 답고 잡 따라마 짜치 버리 자지 타과 꽁 배들이 이 레지디 지마 코범을 까몰라 랩도 범을 까몰라데 나마도 범을 까몰더니 까몰 좀 강나가 고치리샤 드린 진장 거버티 자케치리 코서 파처들이 그냥 거들이 초리치나 뒤쪽까지 양 고치세를 요거지 초리치나 코니게 리치로드 고속을 까몰지요래 초리치나 쪽과를 초리치나 그 진장 손을 그렇지 라마다치 보던 중앙하는 식성 다리 정모제 식성 뒤 그 차고 이제 타과 통통지 이 레지제 그다고 잠도 이 타과 데려다다 때는 패동 타과지 그 차서 정말 패동 그 강도 다지 레지 하래는 이제 레지들이 고차 요사 패동어들이 타과지 독들 싸워하시는 진짜 공부들을 시작해도 then was I did Mama told over the lazy logic, Chiang Gosong, that did much me the total success the lazy, Tomashe already. The data, Lama letter, literally. I love some of the Jimmy Namta.
So they kept putting him into these shackles and these cuffs, and he was always able to release himself. And so then the prison officials considered then obviously we cannot keep him, we can't restrain him with shackles. So how can we restrain him? So then they came up with a rope. And we tied, they bound the rope really tight on through his wrists and legs, and so tightly that blood came from his wrists. And so, anyways, this is actually how he had passed away. And so there was a caretaker, an official, one of the prison guards, who was actually a Tibetan. And he considered Jim Dorje as a really very precious Lama. And so after he had passed away, and so there was this rope that was still left behind that had all the stains of blood on it. And so when they cut off that rope, he secretly kept a piece of that rope that had the blood on it, and he was hiding it because he considered this Lama as really very precious. So he held on to this piece of the rope, and then later when he traveled to Bimotang, to Bimo, which is in another area. So he met. So this prison guard went to Bimo, where he then later also was the kind of the leader of the Bimo prison in that area. So anyways, he met there with one of his acquaintances who, his name was Torit Senam, and Torit Senam was actually the one who had produced first the Rinchen Rinpoche, the precious pills. And so he was friends with Torit Senam, and Torit Senam was friends with Shinjam, who was my friend. And so he told Torit Senam, so this prison guard, right, he told Torit Senam about this great Lama who passed away in prison, and how he had kept his the rope with parts of his blood on it. And then it happened that from this blood that was in the rope, relics, actually, some relic pearls appeared. And so he was quite amazed by that, and so he shared this story with his friend Torit Senam, and who was also very amazed by that. And so then later, Torit Senam, he was friends with my friend, Jinjam, right? Jinjam. And so later, when I had a leave from prison, and I was going to meet my mother, I was traveling with Xinjiang, with my friend, and he knew Chinese really well. And so Xinjiang then told me about that story about how this prison guard met with Torit Senam, and how the relics had appeared from the bloody rope that came from Jim Dorje. And so that also is when I heard that Jim Dorje had passed away in the Chamdo prison. So anyways, this is the story of my guru, Jim Dorje.
그때 롱바트는 주력 가래요나 뒤 주력 제너지 사자고 뭐는 사자제에 되죠. 결국은 롱바 뒤 있잖아. 수좀 잡네. 대도를 투자도 조금 잡요. 투자도 조금 잡요래. 그때 강어 드린 공파 총총 드리고 되었던가 공랑 다다고 잡는 드리 대회에 됐다다. 들람다가 아마는 똑을 로디 든지 동글로래. 저도 동글로 늘 초리치 나다디 종항을 내지데 대중소디 내지데 무슨 것이요래지 그 탐탐난도데 여기 고설 인고요래지
And so Jim Dorje, his main monastery was Gar Monastery, and really wherever he went, he held the Mani retreats in whichever area he went, and also wherever he went, if there were some girls, he would make them monks and would start nuns and would start like a retreat place for them. And in the different areas that he visited, each area might have a different lineage. So if that area was mainly Sakya, then he would just let them be Sakya. He would just build a retreat place or so there, but advise them to follow their own tradition. Or if it was Gelugpa, then Gelugpa, and so on. So he constructed 13 retreat places. So this is for the Anis. 113? Sorry, 113 retreat places. But mainly Jim Dorje then took care of Gar Monastery. So in 1979, when I had a release to meet my mother, that's when I heard from my friend the story of Torit Senam and that prison guard, whom I actually also knew. Because also I had to get some kind of a letter from him to go to Tangtang. Samsung gola. Yeah. So he was the one who issued me the kind of the permission or kind of a letter of permission to cross the border so I could meet my mother.
그러다가 주로다 말이 라면로 주시지. 라마들은 설리들은 라마 민도 어쩌바는 가서 어쩌바야지. 나는 제반 철리 공바 친바텔라 속바다비들이 됐다고 가까이 오래. 됐다고 대신에 소소했더니 다낭당 뭐 저런 거 대신에 소소가 남미에 빼패기 오래. 라마 생고마 다상 차상 다 집어대 라면 니진게 다 로요래 생고마 대바치는 네가 쭉 닦여래 생고마는 니제질 네가 쭉 닦여래 때문에 누가 철주 닦은 말이가서 추가 되잖아 저대 라리 나한테 난 세부대 받들이 내가 시바들이 생고마는 대바다 생고마는 니제질 까들이 닦여래 대회랑 은혜만 통하는 것들이 다른 무슨 자야요 봐 샵지 대다고 샵지 망보요 샵지 사지 망보요 또 대다 가고는 대사나 샵지요 봐대 빠르다면 참마 라자가 땡기요래 제가 망보고 딱지 땅을 자변이라서 봐게 대담제 참이 kel리요 봐be 되게 주로 남말을 해봐야지 냠이 빼펴보요래 라마 찍대 있다고는 라마 참았다는 일이 정말 라마 제발 요말이들이 잘리송지 찍발이 송담주디 톡상지시 받으러 세족가려는들이 사지선지니 샘지 찍발하는들이 샘근이들 라마 샘들과 사족sem요래 대회들이 잡아채 매봐요래 대회 거긴들 송담주 톡상지시 봐 라는 게 제토 잡을라마 잡리도 마셔 산에서 정된 타톡 왕의 담아 왕롱명아 하셔서 가든 섬진이지 왕거 주시 명아 선바텔로 가든 섬진시 그요래 뒤에서 주로 탐색에 라랑게 들이잡기도 맞대면라마 대이 정도 다가 빠지더니 요 처럼 망보더니 라마 사진 것을 예상하더니 텐트 세팅하지 쪽탐을 라마마도 요 말이 대회 나갔더니 라마 동체서 플라이지 애들 자식들이 된 남아집이들이 남타 라디제들이 자성 네바텔이 마마리 제도 삼면 잡아 또다 무시때라서 장매봐요래 제때 다투 초라리 주로 남아 이제 나뇽뇽을 시바니 제때미서 자라난
And so when we hear the stories of our guru, outwardly seen, the guru is a human being just like us. But inside, there is a difference. The guru's activities and his intent, his enlightened intent and knowledge, his wisdom is really different. And so that is why when I think about my guru's story, then my devotion and my pure perception increases, and that really helps my practice. And so it is the more, every time you feel like a pure view toward a higher being, like your guru and so on, your mind becomes purified, and that's why it is so beneficial for the practice. When devotion arises, the mind becomes purified. And so what needs to be purified really in the mind is the dualistic perception. That needs to be purified. And this dualistic thinking becomes purified if we cultivate devotion to the higher beings, and also when we cultivate compassion for sentient beings. That is when the obscurations become purified. The obscurations will not become purified if we try to wash them with water, no matter how much you wash them. Although actually water also is actually the deity. But here we're speaking about the inner obscurations of the mind, and they can only become purified when we cultivate devotion and also compassion. And so for myself, I've really seen these, my gurus, as the actual Buddha. For example, when I saw Jim Dorje's sign of accomplishment when he left those footprints on the rock, which still can be seen today. And actually, generally, there are many stories of masters who have left rock prints. But this is really has been confirmed by scientists. For example, Japanese scientists came and they really examined it and really said that this is really an authentic human footprint. And so it still is present at Garchen Monastery, and we have shared many pictures of these footprints with others. So Dharma friends, these stories on the guru have really, the gurus, when I think about them, it really has benefited my practice. And if I understand the nature of one guru, if I know that one guru is like that, then I can also understand that all gurus are just like that. They are really one and the same. What they speak is the same. It's the holy Dharma. And so therefore, their body is the Sangam, their speech is the holy Dharma, and their mind is the Buddha. Actually, on the mind level, Buddhas and sentient beings are one. They have a single basis. But the unique mind of those gurus is that they possess bodhicitta for all beings. They possess immeasurable love. And so that is why the mind really is Buddha in every sense. So the root gurus are all those, starting from the one who gives the refuge vow, the one who gave me the refuge vow, up until all those gurus who gave me empowerments, transmissions, and instructions. Now we refer to that as a threefold kindness. A guru is endowed with threefold kindness. The kindness of bestowing the empowerment, the transmissions, and the essential instructions. So also for yourself, Dharma friends, this is how you should see your own gurus, starting from the one from whom you received the refuge vow, up until the one who gave you various empowerments and so on. Then if you see that guru as the actual Buddha, then in all future lifetimes, and in this and all lifetimes, this guru is your true protection. And there's no greater protection than that. So anyways, now I've offered you another story of one of my gurus, Dashi Deleg, Dharma friends. So this completes a brief account of my guru Jim Dorje's life story. And of course, there is so much more to be said. There are so many countless stories about his activities, because his activities and his clairvoyance and signs of accomplishments and different miracles are really actually unlimited. So there is no end to telling stories about that, and I don't want to waste your time, Dharma friends, and so therefore I just gave a brief summary of his great activities. So please take a rest now.
Sanjo Rinpoche che manam ji jo je ji boy nyam ma me ba yang gong le be wo jo long lo ta ja ka la jo pa ta ne ta shi di le san yin ja yo.
Buddha says, long life, and everyone on the live stream, Dashi Delek, and see you tomorrow.